we welcome in college football handicapper Brad Powers at BradPower7 on Twitter. You can catch him on the Bet the Board podcast and a number of other places, so make sure to check him out there on social media. All right, Brad, let's get it out of the way. Your thoughts after what we saw unfold in South Bend Saturday night?
Not surprised at what happened in the end game, considering what Notre Dame football has been about the last 30 years. So I wasn't surprised in that regard. I mean, surprised at some things that happened during the game. Number one, I did not expect Notre Dame to win the line of scrimmage. They did, outside of obviously the long run by Travion Henderson for Ohio State. Go look at it. I mean, Notre Dame even had success on the interior of the offensive line. With a young coaching staff, there's going to be some things that left to be desired. I thought some of the play calling there late could be questioned, at least. If it would have worked out the screen pass, I don't think we're questioning it. We would have said how brilliant it was. But obviously not having enough guys on the field the last two plays, unacceptable. I mean, as a Notre Dame fan, it was probably the toughest loss of my 30-plus years watching Notre Dame football, considering I'm from Ohio and had to grow up with Buckeye fans. And it's also the last loss that I'm going to endure because I'm not rooting for him anymore. I decide.
You're done.
I'm done.
It's over.
He put him behind the red tape.
It's over.
Yeah, people think it's a joke. I'm done. It's been leaning that way for about 15 years, but that one ended it, to be honest with you.
Oh, he put him behind the red tape.
It was pretty bad.
Welcome to the club, Brad. Welcome to the club.
It was pretty bad. Being there, oh, man.
Can I ask him a question?
18 years removed from the Bush Push game.
Yeah, because that game's over, so we got to move on because we got more money to make. I made a play today. I want you to tell me what you think about. Think about it. Circa has Washington State 25-1 to win the Pac-12.
Getting choked up over there.
I know, right? I put a play in on Washington State. Reason being, they don't play SC and Utah. And aside from going to Oregon, that schedule is pretty manageable until the last game of the season against Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that was a bad bet, to be honest with you. I think it's pretty wide open. I was very impressed with what they did against a physical Oregon State team last week. Similar success at home against a physical Wisconsin team. So we'll find out. They got a bye week this week. So does their opponent, UCLA. I think that'll be a big game, a big road test for Washington State. But, yeah, from what I've seen offensively, they're as dynamic as pretty much anybody outside of Washington in the country.
All right, Brad, we just did some letdown spots, excuse me. I'm curious to get your thoughts on three games. I'll just pepper you with them. So we got Notre Dame at Duke. The line has moved from 2 to 5.5 at Circa. Clemson opens 7, has dipped below, but now back at 7. They're at Syracuse. And then on the flip side, those two teams, tough losses, obviously. You had Oregon and everything that's come out this week of how much effort they put into that Colorado game and Dan Lanning letting the camera crews in for his pregame speech, the video they put out on social media.
Pretty dope.
They're laying 27 on the road at Stanford before a bye week, before Washington. Of those three games, any plays that you've made?
Surprisingly, I actually bet Oregon, to be honest with you. I'm not sure how much Stanford has left. They've had two big-time efforts back-to-back weeks and come up short at home against Sacramento State and Arizona. And I'm wondering if Oregon, with a bye on deck, they give a little bit better effort than expected. Especially, I don't think they closed that Colorado game like they wanted to. I think they wanted to get a little bit more margin considering what happened in the first half. I do like Syracuse, and I made that bet against Clemson. Clemson, not too often the last 15 years, Clemson's 2 losses in September, and the old handicapping 101 dream crusher. Not much to play for, I guess, at this point with already 2 losses and both of them being in conference play. So, and then typically a Dino Babers Syracuse team that has given better Dabo Swinney teams and Clemson teams fits through the last 5-6 years. So I think Syracuse is live as that one, +7 and a little bit on the money line. On the Notre Dame Duke one, I expected to bet Duke. You bet numbers, not teams. I mean, Notre Dame -2, bet Notre Dame -2. Too short of a line. The market's agreed with me. I think I'll probably come around because I'll get all negative still, even taking my fan hat off. I'll probably bet Duke money line when it's all said and done.
Just something to put on your mind, Brad. I don't know how much you get into player props in college, but Garrett Schrader, Syracuse quarterback. I know it's always tricky betting Russian props for college quarterbacks, but I mean, he's been outstanding running the football.
Yeah, the Purdue game, I mean, he almost had 200 yards. I wish he'd had 250. He could have ran for a touchdown at the end. That would have put the game over the total, and he fell down.
Talking to Brad Powers. Check him out on the Bet the Board podcast as they go in depth, and they've been handing out candy. If you listened to that podcast last week, you had Brad giving out Jacksonville State -6. They won 21-0. A couple other situational spots real quickly to get your thoughts on as we've seen the market actually gravitate towards the dog in this spot. You've got Texas and Oklahoma on deck. They've got the Red River rivalry, which we know is massive, and both these teams being top 15 programs. This week, Texas is now laying 16.5, it looks like. I don't know if there's any 17 still out there. And then you've got Oklahoma laying 20 against Iowa State. Any look-ahead factor for you in either one of those games?
I think more on the Texas side. I mean, just because they're facing a lot better opponent than what, or a lot more dangerous opponent than what Oklahoma's facing. I do agree with the Kansas side. I think offensively, Kansas is as good of a play design and play calling as any team in the country on the offensive side of the ball. So I think that'll be a unique challenge for Texas's defense. It's been good this year. So there's certainly backdoor potential with the Kansas offense to come within 3 scores of that one. And then Iowa State, no, I don't think they can keep pace with Oklahoma. No.
Brad, all right. Everyone's waiting on pins and needles. Last week it was Ohio State, which ultimately was a push, but you also liked the under, which was a rocking chair, and I'm mad at myself for not giving that one out. I felt like those two defenses were going to be really, really tough to score on. So solid week for you last week on the show. Best bet available on the board right now, in your opinion, is what?
I am going to go to the Fighting Brian Kellys and lay the 2.5 with LSU against Ole Miss. I know there's some market resistance here, but I don't like what I've seen from Ole Miss almost all season. I thought they had a couple of better than you look at the box score, not as good as what the final score read in both the Tulane and Georgia Tech games. And then I thought they got absolutely dominated by Alabama in the second half last week. And I think LSU's better than Alabama, even though they struggled to beat Arkansas last week. I just think LSU's a little bit more buttoned up. They're dynamic offensively. Hopefully they can get a stop or two on the defense side of the ball. These are the types of games that Brian Kelly wins. So LSU -2.5 for me.
All right, there it is. A little road chalk for LSU against Ole Miss. Brad, curious to get your thoughts on this game. Total down to 44.5. Friday night, in Corvallis. The Oregon State Beavers now up to a 3.5-point favorite against Utah. Still haven't seen Cam Rising yet. What do you make on this one? Is it a wait and see with the Cam Rising situation? We thought he was going to play last week.
Yeah, I think Oregon State's the right side here. I am part of the Oregon State money early in the week. I think if you're wanting to bet Oregon State, let's just wait. Maybe Cam Rising gets ruled in. Then I'll jump back in and bet more on Oregon State because I think there'll be a rust factor for him. So I think it's a great spot for Oregon State to bounce back after the loss. And I'm starting to wondering how much Utah has left in the tank. They barely hung on in that second half against UCLA. There was some open shots there that obviously Dante Moore missed in the first half. So I think Oregon State might win comfortably actually on Friday night.
Can I interest you in the under in this situation? DJ had a couple running plays that were successful for the most part, very inconsistent throwing the ball. Of course, Utah has been struggling offensively, yet it's hard for me to think that Oregon State's just going to bludgeon Utah running the ball. They're pretty good. Their front seven defense. Total sits at, 44.5?
Yeah, I could see 24-14. Certainly. I mean, that's the pathway for Utah. You saw what they had to do against UCLA. I mean, that's just how it's going to have to be a similar game plan. Very conservative, especially if Utah can get out to an early lead. They'll be so conservative. And I could only look towards the under in the game.
Final thought with Brad Powers, Bet the Board podcast. Make sure you check that out. You were all over Oregon last week, never in doubt, 35-0 at the half. The number has kind of gone all over the place. Open 21, got to 25-ish, and now back down to 21. Final thoughts, USC, Colorado, number at 21.
SC. First half, SC full game. Let's
right.
Go ahead and make more money. Colorado's a fraud. Good story. Great TV.
Do they get to a bowl, Brett?
It's going to be tough.
Yeah. Arizona State, Stanford, Arizona still out on that schedule, so we'll see. Brad, great stuff as always, man.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.